Hey guys, Raymond here from the Beginner Photography Podcast. Today we're talking about the difference between shooting RAW and shooting JPEG. So let's get into it. So when you're starting out as a beginner photographer, you might hear a lot of people tell you that you need to be shooting RAW and you don't understand why. So when I first started, I thought all of these RAW files are just like 10 times larger than the JPEG, except they look kind of washed out and kind of boring. So today I'm going to tell you exactly why RAW is superior to JPEG and why you might just want to stick to shooting JPEG. So simply put, a RAW photo has all of the raw information from the camera sensor and keeps it in a file. And you can't just look at it like you do a typical JPEG like on your phone or regularly on your computer. You have to use a special program to edit it, usually Lightroom. The purpose of shooting RAW is that it retains so much more information. So in this scene, Tyler, if you want to look up, like as you can see, it's a very, bright sky, and yet the trees in here, it's kind of dimly lit. So when you're shooting in JPEG, it's going to compress the photo into what it thinks is correct, whereas in RAW, it'll let you decide afterward. So sometimes you won't even notice a difference in your final edit between shooting RAW and shooting JPEG, but other times it can really be a night and day difference. So right now I'm going to take a couple of photos in both RAW and JPEG and then bring them into Lightroom and show you the difference. Okay, so we are in Lightroom now. These are all the photos that I took out in the field. So we're going to start, as you can see, there's two versions of each photo. One of them is RAW, one of them is JPEG. So we're going to open up this one, and this is the first photo. You can see that it is a JPEG file. The next one, it doesn't say RAW, it says RAF, because I shoot Fuji. If it was a Canon, it would say CR2, and if it was a Nikon, it would say NEF. It's just proprietary to whatever camera system you're using, but just know that it's all the raw sensor data. So just right off the bat, you can see that there's a slight difference between these two files, right? It's the exact same photo, taken at the exact same time. It's the same photo. So why do they look different? Well, one is because in RAW, like I mentioned, it retains all of the information and it's very washed out. It's not processed at all. So you can see this is the JPEG version, and you can see it's a little warmer, it's a little brighter, because these are the changes that the camera made with my white balance settings. This is what the camera thinks is a finished image. So I'm going to bring up the exposure. What I want is I want the fruit right there to be properly exposed. There you go. And then I still want some more information in the sky. So I'm going to go to whites. Bring that down, and the highlights, bring that down as well. There you go. Now we're getting some good detail back in the sky, a little bit of blue color, some more light on the fruit right there. That looks okay. And then just give it a little bit of a warm up. There we go. I think that looks a-okay for an image. So let's go back, and so this is the final edited RAW, and this is the JPEG. Okay, not a huge difference. Okay, so there's definitely more contrast in the JPEG version, but okay. So as you can see in these two photos, maybe it doesn't really matter shooting in JPEG, but the thing to note here is that I properly exposed the photo. So when I came in to edit it, it was pretty easy and clean to work with. Now, what if I accidentally messed up and I shot it 3 stops overexposed, okay? This is the RAW photo, 3 stops overexposed. So let's go ahead and bring this down 3 stops, okay? All right, there we go. That doesn't look too bad. We'll warm it up a little bit. Come on, keep coming with the warmth. All right, that looks good. That looks not bad. Now let's compare it to the other RAW file. Yeah, I mean, you could almost say that they look identical in terms of exposure and color right there, right? Okay, so now let's try to edit the overexposed JPEG. Okay, so let's bring it back down 3 stops. 3 stops. Huh. Okay, so as you can see here, there's quite a difference in the RAW versus the JPEG. As you can see, the JPEG up top in the tree detail up here, it is very gross. As you can see, the difference between JPEG and RAW. We'll go up and get a little more. Whoa, see? You can see the difference. So it's just the amount of information, like I said, that the RAW file retains We'll go down here and look at the fruit. Okay, so this is the JPEG, and this is the RAW. And you can just see how much more information is left in the RAW file. It looks much more natural right there. Okay, so right now we're going to take a more scientific look between these two photos, the JPEG and the RAW, by checking out how much information is lost in the clipping by pressing J. So this is the RAW file. And everything that you see in red means that there is no information. There's going to be no information in the trees. There's going to be nothing, okay? Now let's check out the JPEG version. Whoa. Much more. What's interesting is that now you see it down here in the foreground as well, and even on the fruit, whereas on the RAW file, none of that. Again, another pro to shooting RAW. But now let's do it the opposite way. Let's see what it looks like if we shoot 3 stops underexposed. So let's bring up the RAW 3 stops. Sure, it's underexposed. Okay, you know what? Let's go ahead and keep bringing it up until it's properly exposed. I'd say that's close. Okay, so that's a full 4 stops, okay? Now let's go back to the JPEG and let's bring it up a total of 4 stops. Wow. So already you can see the difference between the two photos. In here you can see little artifacts that the camera is trying to just group together to save as much information as possible. Whereas when you go over to the RAW file, you still see a good amount of detail, which is lost within shooting in the JPEG. And now one final test here, once again with the white balance. Man, look at how off this is. But that sky does look pretty cool. Okay, so in Lightroom, I'm just going to say auto white balance. I'm going to let it decide. Okay, looks pretty good. Gonna bring up the shadows and the blacks. Okay, I like that there. And in the JPEG, we're also going to do auto. Do you see that? Look, that's weird up here. This is like all purple, like where it meets, where the like line is between leaves and sky. It's like purple. Do you guys see that? All of this right here, it's more purple than it is blue. And all of this feels very green. This white does not feel white at all. Whereas right here, this is much more natural. This blue, that's just a darker version of blue. And this white is a pure white. I don't know if that's going to come up in video, but all right here, where it's a mix between white and blue, is very green. It's not very pretty at all. I'm going to come down here and look at some of the detail. Yeah, and once again, the JPEG just looks very washed out. It looks like it's really being pushed to its limits, whereas the RAW definitely still holds its own. It holds its information. There's detail here in the bark, and yet over here in these clouds, it's nice and warm. Over here in the JPEG, it's lost. It's all the same. It's all the same. So these are just some of the reasons why I choose to shoot in RAW over JPEG. But as you can see, there are definitely times where JPEG can come in handy because it's going to save you time when it comes to editing. So if you can shoot right in camera every single time, I might say just go ahead and shoot JPEG forever. But that's not going to be the case, especially when you're growing as a photographer. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, and that's okay. Everybody makes a lot of mistakes. And shooting in RAW is kind of an insurance policy, so that if you do make a mistake, you're going to have that information to be able to fix it in Lightroom later. Also, when you're shooting events like a wedding, you never know what's going to happen to the light, what's going to change, what's going to happen with the people or activities next. Shooting in RAW gives me just a little bit more leeway. So I think the two biggest differences between shooting in JPEG and RAW, aside from the amount of information in the files, is the amount of editing time that's going to be required in RAW is much higher than it is in JPEG, and the amount of memory and hard drives you're going to need also increases just because the size of the files are much larger as RAWs. But for me, that is A-okay. When I shoot a wedding, I'm going to edit all of those photos anyway, so the fact that it takes more time to edit as opposed to a JPEG doesn't really mean anything to me, because I'm going to be editing anyway. And as far as memory and hard drives go, well, that's just part of it. If you want a better photo, but you have to spend a little bit more money on the hard drive, then totally worth it. Don't decide to just shoot JPEG because you don't have a few extra dollars for a hard drive. I just don't think that that's a good argument. Anyway, that's it. What do you guys think? Do you guys shoot in RAW? Do you shoot in JPEG? Why do you shoot the way that you do? I want to know. I'm genuinely curious. And if you shoot in JPEG, are you going to be switching to RAW? And if you like this video, please feel free to let me know by subscribing to our YouTube channel and giving us a thumbs up. Alright guys, that's it. Get out there and just keep shooting. Don't worry too much about the technicals, just get out and keep shooting. Alright, that's it. I will see you guys soon.